we're seeing something fairly remarkable happen on the political terrain. We are seeing the Washington establishment abandoning Marco Rubio. I think they've made the determination that Marco can't win, and they're rushing to support Donald Trump. And just yesterday, Bob Dole explained why the establishment is supporting Donald Trump. They said he's someone we can make a deal with. He's someone we can cut a deal with. And I would note, Donald, just a couple of days ago, drew the difference between me and him. And he said, look, Ted won't go along to get along. He won't cut a deal. So if as a voter you think what we need is more Republicans in Washington to cut a deal with Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, then I guess Donald Trump's your guy.
All right, this, of course, part of the back-and-forth exchange, the late-minute involvement of National Review and their front-cover piece against Trump. Now, some people whose names are on this list I respect, others I could care less about. And, of course, I do think that Cruz is right in a sense. You know, but in as much as, now that the establishment has to choose between one insurgent candidate over another, meaning Cruz versus Trump, I think they hate them both. And maybe not so equally. Maybe at the end of the day, they hate Cruz more than Trump. There is some truth to that. Anyway, what to make of all of this? We have Jeffrey Lord, author of the brand new book, What America Needs, The Case for Trump, and constitutional so-called expert Danielle McLaughlin, apparently a Democrat who does not like Trump. How are you?
Doing well.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
So, Danielle, you like Hillary, right?
You know, I haven't made up my mind. There are great things about Hillary. There are great things about Senator Sanders. I haven't decided yet, but I will tell you that I'm definitely not for Donald Trump or Ted Cruz.
But the one thing that you have to admit is Hillary's had an awful week. She has now numerous polls showing her down to Bernie Sanders in Iowa, down 27 points in New Hampshire. So there's been a dramatic shift. And on top of that, the Inspector General of the intelligence community's report that dozens of emails were found that on her email server that transcend even the level of top secret.
I would agree. It's not been a great week for Hillary Clinton. I would say on the back of this National Review piece, it's probably a worse week for Donald Trump. I have to say, Sean, it's rare for me to agree with so many conservatives on so many things all at once. But reading through this piece and seeing what folks have to say, I think one of the biggest things we can take out of this piece is that we're actually maybe less divided than we think we are, or maybe our politicians say that we are, based on what some folks here are saying about who they want our commander-in-chief to be.
Jeffrey Lord, what do you make of the late hour push by the people of National Review, which is fairly unprecedented? One of the things that I said to a friend of mine last night who does not like Donald Trump, I said, where was National Review when the Republicans were caving to Obama on using the power of the purse on repealing and replacing Obamacare? Where was that special edition? Where was the special edition, last February when they funded the Department of Homeland Security and backed off their 2014 campaign promise, which was that they would stop executive amnesty? I mean, why does National Review come all out big here?
Yeah, I have the same question, and like you, I know some of the people on the list and greatly admire them and respect them. I just disagree with them on this, and I would say, as somebody who is a contributing editor of the American Spectator, there is a feeling, I think, at least with me and perhaps some others, that the American Spectator tends to listen more to the American people than the sort of Beltway New York axis there that National Review seems to be involved with. And the American Spectator, lots of us think very highly of Donald Trump. So there is a disagreement there. Not all, quote-unquote, right-leaning magazines, as it was explained in the New York Times, are opposed to Donald Trump. I don't know why they felt compelled to do this. I mean, like you, my thought was, where were they when Mitt Romney was running, and they were pushing Mitt Romney like crazy, and he, of course, was the father of Romneycare, which in essence makes him the godfather of Obamacare. And they thought he was terrific. There was no limited government about that, and they were all there for that. So, as I also recall, they went after Newt Gingrich, went out of their way to go after Newt Gingrich. At one point, even trying to say that he was opposed to Ronald Reagan. And I, of course, had been in the White House at the time, dealt with Newt Gingrich myself, and knew exactly to the contrary. So I don't know what this is all about in some sense. I think whether it's a power base or what, I don't know. I don't want to, ascribe motives. I take their dissent honestly, but I certainly disagree with it, and there are a lot of conservatives out there that disagree with them. I'm certain of that.
Yeah. I've always taken the position that I like the idea of the rise of the insurgency. And the fact is that this entire election primary season has been, this big story has been about the rise of insurgents. I like it because I think Republicans have earned this. I think the Republican Party has earned the disdain of richly deserve this. And, you know, what I'm trying to do on this program is offer airtime to people, you know, to get their views across. And I think I've been pretty fair to every candidate. I'd like to think I was. You know, I think it's interesting that, you know, I have listeners that writing me, tweeting me, telling me who I support. And it literally spans the entire spectrum. So I guess I did something right in some aspects of this. You have decided that Donald Trump is your guy. Well, can you think of anything that he said? Well, let me ask this question.
Yeah.
How do you answer the fact that he is a recent convert to conservatism?
Well, you know, the Cruz campaign is putting around a tape that shows Donald Trump 17 years ago, in 1999, talking about in essence, his New York values, and he's pro-abortion and all this. I went back and found a tape of Ronald Reagan, 17 years before he ran for governor of California. He was endorsing Harry Truman for president, and Harry Truman, of course, was very much for a single-payer health care system. In fact, he was further to the left on this than President Obama has been in practice. And there was Ronald Reagan side by side with Harry Truman, and also endorsing Hubert Humphrey for the same reason. I just think you have to be careful with this. I think that people can grow, people can change. Is Donald Trump, I mean, I should take this head on. Is Donald Trump a, you know, quote unquote conservative in the same sense that Ronald Reagan is? Has he read some of these things and sort of come to these conclusions? I'm not sure that he has necessarily, but I do think that he understands small c conservatism in his bones. He is, after all, a businessman, and you don't build or much less run the Trump Organization, which is the formal name of his business, like some out-of-control liberal. You run it based on sound principles, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to run it, build it, and run it successfully, and he certainly has managed to do that. I think he's very attuned to conservatives. He came, as a matter of fact, 3 years ago. We had a dinner for the American Spectator, and the headliners were he and Senator Cruz. And I have a column in the Spectator today suggesting that in spite of all the sort of necessary stuff that goes on between them as we go through this campaign that happens in primaries, that if Donald Trump wins, he should pick Ted Cruz as a running mate. I mean, I would, you know, I know that would cause a coronary inside the Beltway with a lot of these Republicans, but I think it would be terrific.
Danielle, let me ask you this question. So Hillary, the other night, I'm watching her during the debate, and all she's doing is praising Barack Obama and wrapping herself around Barack Obama. So my question to you is, as somebody that would support either Hillary or Bernie Sanders, is do you think Barack Obama's been a good and successful president?
I think in many ways and by many measures he has. We have. Well,
let's give me the measures where he has, and let's deal with them one at a time, and we'll debate them.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, let's look at immigration. Net immigration over the Mexican border is at zero and has been descending since 2007. I know that there was a lot of consternation in this country about
Danielle, I was down at the border. While I was down there, people crossed over successfully. Perhaps you missed the last couple of summers and literally thousands and thousands of people crossing that border. As a matter of fact, the last 2 years have been higher than they've been in the last decade. I don't know what rock you're living under.
Well, I'm not living under a rock, but my point is that the net immigration, so in versus out, is. Oh,
you mean the net immigration in terms of legal immigration? Do you support the president bringing
illegal immigration? The number of illegal immigrants.
That's just not true. That's just not true.
I have data to support that. You know, what I'd like to go back to is with Jeff. I actually agree with Jeff. We're here to talk about Donald Trump, and I'm not really interested in being an apologist for Hillary or Obama. I think your listeners have far more interesting and important things to hear here. I do agree with you, Jeff. I do understand that folks change their minds and they evolve over time. And I think what the National Review and some of these authors are concerned about, I'm not saying I share it, is that they are really dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. They are hoping and yearning for a truly conservative president like we saw with Ronald Reagan. I think they're concerned that while Donald Trump is a Republican and is certainly espousing and expressing and has lived many Republican values, he's not that constitutional conservative that they really hope for. Jeff, to your point, the idea of a Cruz-Trump team as running mates, I could see why folks would think that would be a great thing for the GOP.
Jeff, do you notice that Danielle doesn't want to talk about Obama's record? I'm not surprised.
I can't imagine why.
Well, Danielle, he did.
He's had,
Danielle, let me help you out here.
Troubles.
Because I'm going to save you by going issue by issue because you're going to lose. All right. Because he once said that $9 trillion in debt was irresponsible and unpatriotic. He will accumulate more debt than every other president before him combined by the time he leaves. We now have millions of more Americans on poverty, net Americans, than when he took office. Millions more on food stamps. We have the lowest labor participation rate in nearly 40 years. We have median income literally down in the 7 years he has been the president of the United States. Home ownership now at the lowest rates that they have been in decades as well. If you look on a national front, he will pretty much ensure that the Iranians get a nuclear weapon and $150 billion and missile defense with Vladimir Putin. He did nothing with the red line in Syria except enable, by pulling out of Iraq early, ISIS to grow and not only have a financial source of oil, but take over cities Americans fought, bled, and died for: Mosul, Ramadi, Fallujah, and Tikrit. Then I haven't even mentioned Putin, Ukraine, and Crimea.
And don't forget, Sean, some of the money, as John Kerry said the other day, that's going to Iran is going to go to terrorists, and they're just apparently fine with that.
And we'll get to the bottom of that in the next half hour. So what
I'm
you
just
would...
not sure a Donald Trump presidency would fix any of these problems. This is
Danielle,
the point here.
Danielle, you can't counter one thing that I've just said. That is what the litany I just laid out for you is a presidential disaster, and you're going to vote for more of that. Why?
Obama came into this country, into this election cycle back in 2008 with a notion of hope and change. And what I'm seeing and he was also speaking, I think, to a lot of disaffection and concern that Democrats felt after the George W. Bush administration, where we were seeing all sorts of things happen.
More Americans on food stamps, more Americans in poverty, fewer Americans working than in decades, a doubling of our national debt. How is that better?
I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying it's going to be any better under Donald Trump. I think what these folks in the National Review have been talking about is the kind of leader that we want. And is Donald Trump and other things that he says American?
But you want a socialist. You want Hillary.
They're un-American. I don't want socialism. I do not want socialism.
So you won't vote for Bernie Sanders then?
Frankly, the American system already has a number of markers of socialism.
Danielle,
Social Security.
Danielle, would you or would you not vote for Bernie Sanders over Trump or Cruz?
Oh, yes.
And would you not vote for Hillary over Trump and Cruz?
I would, absolutely.
So you're voting for socialism. Jeffrey, what part doesn't she see here?
This just goes on and on and on with these people. I mean, socialism has been tried over and over and over again, and it fails. And yet, it's like the Einstein definition of, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I mean,
I don't disagree with you, Jeffrey. I think the GOP
economically
tried to
are exactly the things that we all knew, those of us who pay attention to these things, were going to happen if what was done was done. So now here we are living with the results of this. Sean, when I appear on CNN from the studio here in Harrisburg, there's a guy there who wires me up and does my mic and all this sort of stuff. He's got a graduate degree in electric engineering from Penn State. This guy hasn't been able to find a full-time job in 3 years. And to say he's irritated is to understate.
And by the way, you don't need an engineering degree to patch up that line either. So, I mean, this is below his level of education, and I'm not downgrading it. He's working, and I honor that. But I mean, in other words, there's not the opportunities that he would really deserve. That's what it says. Yeah.
Correct.
All right, I got to run. Thank you both. Jeffrey, thank you. Danielle, great to have you on. Appreciate it.
We know you